So I've been playing golf since I was in my late 20s. It's not like I started when I was early. But if you add it all up, I've been playing for over 20 years now. And to be honest with you, it really wasn't until I got to this year that I really realized how important it was to add width to your swing. Welcome to Dean Macco Golf. I'm coming to you from gorgeous Eagle Ridge Golf Course in Raleigh, North Carolina. So this is actually the second video in my series. I want you to go back and watch the very first video. In that video, I explain one of the really secret moves that I've uncovered over this past year of really doing a lot of practice, a lesson, a lot of watching other YouTube videos. That initial swing thought video should be watched before this one. Now this one simply builds off of that and will provide you with significantly longer iron play, significantly better ball striking, and hence significantly lower scores and lower handicaps for you as you continue to work through these moves. What do I mean by width? Well, I'm going to call it the push and pivot type of swing thought, if you will. So maybe swing thoughts 2 and 3, and we're going to combine them into a push and pivot. You know, I traditionally was just standing here and I would lift up my club and I'd have a significantly bent arm. I played high school baseball, and I'd come down on the ball, and more times than not it would be a glancing blow, it would be a weak slice. And I'm going to show you kind of what that swing looks like. And of course I've got my trusty Swing Caddy 200 here. It's going to help us out with the distances on my 7-iron. Again, this used to be a 140 club for me, and we'll see how we can really kind of step on that later in the video. But you know, this is kind of how I looked. You know, I'd bring it back, and I see a lot of this on the driving ranges as well, like this, and then like this.
107 yards.
And the ball is just peeling away to the right, and it's not a very punchy blow to the ball at all. And so this year, you know, I started looking at some videos from the pros, and there isn't a single pro out there that has a bent arm in his backswing. It's like their arms are almost locked in at the joint. They're absolutely ruler straight when they take the club back. So, you know, I was thinking about, oh, let's just kind of see what happens if I lock this in and try to get width and you know, more arc on my swing, right? Versus this. Significantly more arc on my swing and more power, more club head speed when I swing down on the ball from here than if I swing down on the ball from here. Not to mention it's going to help me come in from the inside when I have this sort of takeaway anyhow. So one of the things I want you to work on is a really slow and low takeaway. And this is the push part of our practice sequence. So I want you to just push the club out, you know, almost to the point here where I'm just grazing the tops of these, you know, these buckets here that I've stacked up. Slow and low, and it's going to allow you to keep this arm relatively straight. And that's going to be absolutely critical when we move into our next pivot sequence. So push those hands out there. Make sure you're not standing up though. You know, keep your head in one spot. Just push those hands out there. So the pivot part of our swing sequence is going to be the second in today's steps. So we've got us pushing out our fist to give us a straight arm here. And the pivot part is so important because for years, again, I'd be sliding my whole body forward and my hips would be back and forth. You know, I'd come back here, I'd be on the right, and then my hips would slide forward and I'd be on the left. And really, when you watch the pros, they are not sliding their hips back and forth. They're actually just rotating them. And that's how they pivot the weight off from the right side of the foot onto the left side of the foot. So once you're in kind of this ideal position where you think you've grabbed as much width as possible, I want you to think about just initially turning those hips. Just work on a little move like this where you initially turn those hips. It's like someone's grabbing you from the waist here and just giving you a little tug back. And what that is going to do is going to allow you to just pivot around. And so I don't want you to think, move this way. There might be a slight bump out in your hips, but I want you to bring it back and then immediately pivot, and then keep those wrists nice and loose like we talked about in the first video series, and then, you know, follow through into that swing. So it's going to look a little something like this. Let's wake up our launch monitor here.
$145 yards.
And that was a really easy stroke, guys. You know, I was hardly putting anything into it. Let's try to pick up the pace a little bit, and I'll maybe get a shot from the backside too to see, you know, have you see how my takeaway is looking from back there. So as I pull this club back, again, I'm going to be going slow and low, trying to brush the top of those baskets. And I'll know that I'm in the right position if I bring this back and the club is basically covering my hands. If the club is in the vicinity of my hands right now, then I know I've taken the club back. I'm not way out here, which means I took it back way outside. I'm not way in here, which means that I took the club way inside, way too quickly. Slow and low. Keep that arm straight. And you're basically right in here. And then you can continue with the rest of your rotation and pivot right into the ball. Alright, let's give that another shot. Push and pivot. Push and pivot. And then keep your wrists nice and loose. That was from the first lesson. Alright, push, slow and low, pivot.
151 yards.
Okay, a little thin, but pretty decent distance on that. Let's try it one more time. Alright guys, push then pivot.
$151 yards.
So with a bit of rollout, that's about a 160-yard shot. That is not bad at all for my 7-iron again. This used to be my 140 club. Now it's basically my 160, maybe even more if I jump on it club. So, you know, I've gained again about 2 clubs distance just by following some of these techniques that I've outlined both in the first video and also in this video. So keep following me, keep working with me. There'll be a lot more tips coming up, and really kind of practice these moves, keeping your wrists open, having that race that I talked about in the first video, and in this video, the push and pivot swing thoughts, and you'll be striking your irons like a champ in no time. Thanks.